Hey guys, it's Mrs. Lamphere, and in this video we are working on the table formatting assignment found in section 4, part H. So for this assignment, we need to recreate this table that they show us below. And they give us some specifics on the table. So we need to recreate this table using HTML, and we need to make sure we include the CSS definition, so we need to create different styles to apply to our table. Here are some clues to help us out. They tell us the table is 500 pixels wide. The cell colors are, and then they give us the 3 different color codes that they use to fill in the cells. The table border color, and they give us the code, looks like a yellow color. The outside cells are 25% of the width of the table. So these two outside cells are 1/4 of the size of the entire table. So we need to keep that in mind when we're putting in the height and width of our table. The height of the center cell is 25% of the height of the table. So this middle cell here, the height of this row is 25% of the entire height of the table. So we'll need to keep that in mind as well. So we will be opening Notepad. We're going to write the CSS code in order to apply the colors and the border to the table. We'll need to write the HTML code to draw out the rest of our table. We will be saving the file as table.html in our Unit 2 folder. Since there are no images in the assignment, again, we won't have to zip the file, and we'll submit. So when you submit this to me, it'll just be a table.html file that you will be submitting to the Dropbox. Okay, the first thing I want to have you guys do is go to our course homepage and check out this announcement I just posted called General Code for Building Websites. I actually provide you with a link in here that I mentioned this in the Class Connect last week, that I was going to be providing you with some general code to kind of help you with getting started on a lot of these website projects, because a lot of the code is the same. So I've given you the code, and so we're just going to copy that and paste it into a notepad. And so again, I'm providing you with this code just to kind of help you with getting started on a lot of these assignments. The HTML tag, head tag, kind of the basic setup of CSS styles, the basic setup of the body of your paragraph. So if you were to open this code as a HTML, this is what you would see. So very basic, very plain. Again, it's just code to help you get started on a lot of these assignments. So I'm going to open up this code that I gave you and let's go back to this assignment then. All right, so I'm opening up the code that I gave you, and we're going to just make some changes in here, and again, to recreate this table. So the first thing I'm going to want to do is create my CSS styles. So I have my untitled notepad here so far, and here's my CSS styles that I gave you in the general code. But now we need to recreate those into styles that we actually need to apply to this table. So if we go back in our text to part F, you can kind of scroll down and see this is what the CSS styles look like for a table. They named them, for instance, table background 1, here's our background color, here's the font size you're going to use, and here's the color of the font within that cell. Whenever I apply this style table background 1, that's what you would see. But for this assignment, you notice on that table that we're trying to recreate, we don't have text, we don't have font color, so all we need to worry about is applying the background color to those different cells. So when I look at this code here in part F, I'm going to just copy what I need over to my general code here. So I'm going to want to go and open my colors palette that I remember using back in part E for this assignment. So I'm going to go to part E and open up this color chart so I know what colors I'm working with in my table. So if we go back to our table assignment, it tells us we need to use colors, the code 0000F, 330066, and FF0000. So I know I'm using blue, red, and purple, right? So I'm going to find out, I just can't remember off the top of my head which code these match with. So let's go first and find blue. So blue is this 0000FF color. And let's apply that. So I'm going to apply that blue color. I forgot to copy it. So copy, and then go back to my notepad and paste. So this blue color is going to be my table background. And I'm just going to put table background blue so I can keep my color straight. So my table background 1 blue is my blue color. So I don't need to apply any text again or font color. This is all I need for the table background colors that I'm using. So I'm going to get rid of all of these other CSS styles that I don't need. I'm not working with text, I'm not working with paragraph styles, I'm not working with citation text, I'm just working with table background colors. So I'm going to highlight here what I have for my first table background style, and I'm going to just paste it a couple times because I know that that's what I'm going to be working with, right? So I have my blue color set up. I still need to do purple. I'm going to name this table background to purple. And so I'm going to need to find the code for the purple background, which they gave us. I'm guessing it's going to be this 330066. Let's see if that matches up with a purple color on here. These are my purple colors. Okay, so do I say 330066 for any of these? I'm actually not seeing it on this page. So I can't find this exact code on either of these color documents, but I'm going to guess that that's my code for purple because I'm pretty sure that this FF000 color is my red color. So let's go and double check. Here's red. Yep, FF0000 is my red color. So I'm pretty sure that that 330066 is my purple color. So I'm going to punch in that code for purple, 330066. And then this last table background style, I'm going to call it table background 3 red. And the code for red is FF0000. Okay, so I have my style set up for my table background colors. I'm going to go ahead and save this in my portfolio, Unit 2, and you should be saving this as directly inside your Unit 2 folder. So I'm a little ahead of you guys and I have some different folders set up in here. But I believe this just goes into your Unit 2 folder saved as tables.html. So save this inside your Unit 2 folder as tables.html. Okay. So we have our styles applied to the background for the background colors. Now we still need to apply the style in order to get this border color. So if I go back to part F and scroll down in part F to where it talks about borders, I can see this was the information it gave me on how to set up different border styles. So I'm going to copy that code for a border into my CSS Styles. And let's see if it'll let me, I'm just going to highlight because it allows me to highlight. Go back to my notepad, paste. And here's my table 1 border dotted. Now I need to make sure I'm using the correct colors. So I'm going to go back to part H where the assignment is. The border color is FFFF00. So I'm going to go, I have my table border style, or it's table 1 border dotted. It's already gave me the dotted format, so I'm going to leave that alone because it looks like the border I'm working with here is dotted. And the color I need to use is FF, capitalize that, FFFF00. So that's my yellow border color. So I'm going to go ahead and file, save. All right. So we still need to apply these styles. So we need to apply these styles to the body of our website. So I'm going back to my general code here. So I have all my styles set up, my table background colors, my table border color and style. One thing I still need to change up here in my heading is we need to call this, I believe this is, our instructions tell us to call this the table formatting assignment. So this is the title that's going to appear on the tab once we open this as an HTML. And let's go ahead and see what that looks like real quick. So I'm going to actually save this portfolio, unit 2, tables.html. Yes. And let's see what we've got so far. So perfect. We have our title change, table formatting assignment, but as you know, we haven't applied any of our styles yet. So we don't see any of our styles taking shape, but I do know that my title and my heading is working, so that's a plus. Okay, let's go back to our notepad here. Okay, so I know that in the body of my website, I don't need a lot of this stuff, right? I'm not applying any background color to my website. I'm only working with the table. I don't have any title or heading on my website. I want people to see. I want the title on my tab, but I don't need like a title on directly on my website. I don't have any paragraphs that I need to apply a style to, and I don't have any citation text that I need to apply a style to. So what I need to work with still though is inside body of my website, I need to put in the information that I need to create a table. So if we go back to where we start talking about tables, here's the code that I kind of need to start working with, right? So we have body. Let's start with our table border. So we know our table is going to have a border, so I can include that information. And I'm going to go ahead and just copy this code to help me with getting started with setting up my table. So I have the body of my website. I have a table with a 2-pixel border so far. And we know TR means I'm starting a new row. TD means I'm starting a new column. And so I have 1 column, 2 columns on this row. So they actually gave me the code for this little table that you see down here. So it's a 2-row, here's the start of my second row, 2-column table. And I need to turn that into, a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 row, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 column table. So let's look at some of the other specifics it tells us about our table. It's 500 pixels wide. So in my table border code, I need to enter that information in. So I do my semicolon, sorry, and then we type in width equals 500 pixels, and it doesn't tell us a height. So if we know that 500 pixels is what is wide, we can kind of guesstimate right away, all right, if this is 500 pixels wide, this maybe looks about, let's start with 200 pixels tall and see what that gets us. So let's start with height equals 200 pixels, and we're going to apply by saying class. That means we're going to apply the table style, well, that's all right. So I know we named this table 1. We can keep that table 1. Usually you name your table border style table border, but we can just keep it table 1 for now. Okay, so we have a table with a border of 2 pixels. It's going to be 500 by 200, and we're going to apply the style table 1. So let's go ahead, file, save, and see what that looks like. So this kind of shows us what we've got so far. Because we copied that code, we have some of the same text, as you can see, from the code we copied from the text. But you can see we have a good size table, 500 pixels wide. Looks like about the right height so far. And we've just got the information then from what we copied in the text, so we still have to go in and change some of that information. Okay, so I have my table set up with my code here. Now I need to tell it what to do in the first row. So I type TR, which is my first row, and within my first row, the first column needs to look like this, right? So in my first row, first column, so we're looking at this very first cell of our table, this top left corner. First row, first column. I'm going to delete what they have that I copied from the text and put in my own information. So we know from our instructions, we need to make this first column, the outside cells are 25% of the width of the table. So in my first column, I need to make this 25% of the width of my table. So that's pretty simple to do. We type in width and the equal sign, 25%. And I also, in this first cell, I want it to have my blue background, right? So I need to tell it to apply by saying class equals for quotation marks. And I called that style, I'm just going to copy and paste it so that I don't mistype it. Table background 1 blue, and my quotation marks there. Close that tag and close that column with my /TD. Okay, so that's I'm in my first row, first column of my first row, and I wanted it to be 25% width of my table, and then apply the table background blue color. Okay, in this next column of my table, of this row, you'll notice that it spans 3 columns. We read about spanning columns. We read about spanning columns back in part G under row span and column span. So here's my code, and so I know that when I want to span columns, look at this code here. So this tells me that this column is going to span, or that this row is going to span 3 columns, okay? And that's exactly what I want to have happen on my row as well. So I'm going to go down to that row, that column of that row, and we're going to type in, so we have TD, call span equals quotation marks 3. So I'm going to span 3 columns, and we're going to apply class, and I believe that we want just one white background. We might not even have to apply, right, so we have this cell here is what we're working on right now. So I actually don't need to apply a class or the font. So I can, actually, let's delete the rest of that line. So we just want this row to span 3 columns. So let's kind of review what we've done so far with this table. We have the border set up, the width of 500 pixels, the height of 200 pixels, and we applied the table 1 border. The first row, we have worked with the first cell in the first row. We made it 25% width of the table. We applied table background 1 blue in the first cell. The second cell, we want it to span 3 columns, and we're not applying any color to it, so that's all we want to do is to span 3 columns. So now I still have this third cell that I have to work with in this row. So I'm going to return down, open tag, new cell, and it's going to look, it looks almost identical to this first cell, right? It's going to be 25% of the width, so I can copy that, and let me grab it all here, copy, paste. So it's, again, 25% of the width. Now, but it's going to have a red background, right? So I'm typing in class to apply my style, quotation marks, and then I'm going to go up to the top of my table here and grab my style that I made for the red background, and quotation marks, and close that cell. Okay, let's save that and see what it looks like. Open up our tables HTML, And it looks like we're off to a pretty good start. I have my first cell in blue. My next cell spans 3 columns and is white, and because I did not apply any background color to it, so it just kind of defaults to white. And then my last cell here has the red background. I've got my yellow dotted border around it, so we're looking pretty good. All right, let's go back to our notepad and work on our next row. So that ends our first row. We have our first row. The first cell is blue. The second cell is the 3-column white cell. And then our third cell is the red cell. So we're done with that row. Now we start our next row. And our next row, as you can see, it's going to cover a few rows. So they kind of threw some tricky stuff at you right away. So with this next row, we can go ahead and, oops, I lost my notepad there. We can go ahead and delete what's in there. We don't want to apply anything to the entire row. So if we were to leave, let me just show you what was in there. If I were to leave this in there, it would apply it to the entire row. I don't want to apply anything to this entire row, so I'm going to take that out of there. In the first cell, I'm going to make some changes to that. So I'm going to delete what they had in there for the first cell and start punching in my own information. So if we go back to the section that talks about, I think it was part G, column and row span. So I did column span to span 3 columns. Now, judging by what they want from my table, I want this cell to span several rows. So in order to span several rows, I need to type in the code row span. So I'm going to go back to the assignment here. And this looks like it wants me to, this cell is going to span over 1, 2, 3 rows. So I go to my code, I type in row span equals quotation marks 3, quotation marks, and that's going to make that cell span the next 3 rows below it. Okay, so we have that spanning the next 3 rows below with that row span. Now we're going to work on this next cell. So we just finished this cell. Now we're moving on to this next cell of this row, which we need to apply that blue background. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to return in between each row just so I make sure. So this is my first row. I don't want to mess with that anymore. I'm working on my second row, and this is the first cell in my second row. Now I'm working on the second cell in my second row. And so in my second cell, I'm going to apply the style. I'm going to do that same table background 1 blue. Equal sign, quotation marks, apply that style, quotation marks, close that cell because I'm done with that cell now. Now I'm working on this white cell. So I need to do another line, open new cell. And this one's going to be pretty easy just because I'm not doing anything in this cell. So I'm just going to open and close it just to indicate that there is a cell there, but there's no information inside of it. Okay, and then my next cell is this red. So I'm going to type in class and apply again my red color. And then close off that cell. And in my last cell of this row, I'm back to, I need to span 3 rows again and in that cell. So let's open this cell. I'm going to just copy what I have up here because I want it to look just like that. Okay, in that cell, and then that is the end of that row. So I finished with that row. Now let's move on to the next row. So I tell it new row, and let's see. So this first cell of this next row, you can kind of see again I don't need to do anything with this first cell in this row. And actually, like with this next row that I'm working on, so I want to try and keep all of this on the same screen so you can see it. So here's the table. Here's my code. Okay, so this is my first row. This is my second row. Now I'm working on my third row. In my third row, is going to be these three cells here. So I've already combined. I don't need to worry about this first and last cell because I've already combined it with the previous row, right? So this third row is I'm only working with these three cells here. So since my first cell is blank, I can go ahead and open and close that. There's no information going inside. The second cell is where I'm going to, I believe I had some specific instructions with my height. So the height of this center cell is 25% the height of the table. So I need to make sure I include that in my code. So I go with my row here, and I wanted to tell it height equals 25%. And I want to apply my class. So semicolon, then I apply my class. And this is where I'm going to go grab that purple color. So I grab my purple style, and I copy that, paste that inside quotation marks down here. And then close that cell. And then my last cell is going to look a lot like my first cell in that row. So I'm just going to copy and paste that code again. Okay, oops, now we need to close that row. So I'm done with that row. I'm on to my next row, which again, I only have those three cells to work with in this row. So it's going to look very similar to the row we just completed. So new row, except in this first cell, now I'm back to using my red background. I'm going to say class, we're going to apply table background 3 red, not paste, I need to copy that, apply it, close that cell. My next cell, again, there is nothing inside that cell, it's just white, so we can leave it. And then in my third cell, I'm again applying this blue style. So equals my blue, close that cell, and close that row. Okay, I just finished this 1, 2, 3, 4th row here with the red, white, and blue cells. Now I'm on my 5th and final row, so I say new row, and in the first cell of this row, we're going to again apply this background color red. So I'm just going to copy that entire line of code and paste it. And again, we're seeing the same thing with this row. I want this bottom row to match the top row for that column span. So I'm going to go back to where I did that column span, grab that code, pick it back down here, and apply it there. And then my last cell is going to again be the blue background color. And close that cell. And then close that last row. Okay. So there's all my code for the table. Let's see what it looks like so far. Save that. Open it here. Hey, what do you know? So you can see this is what I've got so far. So obviously I have some kinks in my code. I've got some, looks like additional rows here. Columns here. I'm not sure where these came from, so I need to go back to my notepad to make sure I can make adjustments and find out what's going on. Okay, so somewhere along the lines I misplaced some text that it looks like I kind of copied and pasted in the wrong spot in my code, which is really, really easy to do. When you have all these rows going on and you're copying and pasting stuff, it's really simple to kind of lose track of which row you're working in and misplace your code. So in this first row, I can see that this is where I went wrong. So I have my first cell, 25% width, my blue background, that's that cell there. This next cell is the column span 3, so I have it spanning 3 columns. So that looks good there. This is where I start to go wrong. I must have copied and pasted this text incorrectly because I need this to be my red background, and you can see it looks like I might have misplaced this text before. So I'm going to delete those 2 rows of text. You might have that there, you might not, depending if you pasted it in the right area. But I obviously did that. Somehow I mispasted that. So let's see if that fixes my table. So I'm going to open up my HTML. Okay, so that fixed it with those additional rows, but you can still see my column width is off. So I must have also deleted where I need this last column width to also be 25%. I'm going to copy and paste that back in here for this final cell in that row. Hit save, and let's try opening that again. Okay, much better. So this was that last time that I went back in and said, all right, I need this final column to be 25%, and this is what I get. So let's compare what we have to what the instructions show us. So you'll notice the instructions kind of show all of these cells with borders. They just did that to show you separated out how many rows and columns we're supposed to have. So we're not going to see all of these lines in our own table because of the way it's set up. They just wanted, again, to show us all the different lines to indicate all the separate rows and columns that they're using. So our table looks pretty good. I'm going to say our middle cell isn't quite right. Their purple square looks a little taller. So this is kind of where you would go in and fine-tune, make some adjustments on your table to make that work. So I'm wondering if I make our table a little taller. So I had a height of 160 pixels. I thought I had that set at 200. I must have changed that somewhere along the way. I thought I had that set at 200. Let's see what 200 looks like. So 200 is a little taller. I'm going to go back in. Let's make that 170. And I still want that row, even though they gave me a specific percentage of 25% of that middle cell. I'm going to go back in and make that just a little taller. Because to me, it looks like that cell should be a little taller in order to match exactly what they have in the image. Alright, so that looks pretty good to me. So I increased the percentage of height of my middle cell here, and I think that matches pretty good to what our instructions show. So I'm going to file, save that, and that is what you'll want to submit for this assignment. So again, make sure you have that saved as table.html in your Unit 2 folder. There's no need to zip anything. You're just attaching the table HTML file. And be sure to check out the rubric. This is what I'm going to be looking for. That use the correct CSS code. All table cells are correct width and height. If you tweaked it just a little bit, like I just did, that's completely fine. I'll be looking to make sure you did correct column and row spans and that you're using the correct colors. So that is it for this tables assignment. Make sure you get that turned in and let me know if you have any questions.